All right, delighted to be joined on the line from North Carolina by the new manager of the Charlotte Independents, Jim McGuinness. Good evening.
Good evening, Nathan.
How is North Carolina?
It's been great so far. We just moved last Thursday with the whole family here,
right,
and are starting to get settled into the environment and hoping to make strides in the football side of things as well over the next couple of weeks as we move towards the start of pre-season on the 4th of February.
I'd say they're fun conversations from Scotland to China to Charlotte at home.
Very much so, and the baby, he's just 2, and he was in the back of the car today, and he wanted out of the baby seat, and he says, "I want oot." And we're saying that was at least one couple of words that he got from Scotland anyway when he was spent his time over there. So it was funny. Whatever accent he'll have in a couple of years from now.
Yeah, it's great that they can all go, and I guess it's such an important part of an experience like this, that the family are with you and they settle and they enjoy it, because you're going to spend a good chunk of your life away from work as well, that you need a good, happy lifestyle so that you can actually work to your best.
No, you certainly do. You certainly do. And, I suppose I was in Celtic maybe 4 years before the family moved across, and then they were only there. I was only there for a short period of time when I went to China, and so when you don't have them, then you do really miss them, and you and obviously, like for all of us, life is very, very fast right now, and moves very quickly, and so having your kids around you every day is really important, and it's sometimes football can be very busy as well, and it's hard to get your days off, and when you do, you've got to make sure that you make the most of them and appreciate them with your family for sure.
I see you were formally welcomed to the United States by His Excellency Daniel Mulhall, the Irish ambassador to the United States. Does that raise a few eyebrows around Charlotte when they're bringing over a coach who's worked with Roger Smith, who's worked at Celtic, and they're thinking we're getting a new fresh voice, and then there's this legendary status that they didn't realise was there?
I don't know about that, but no, it was great. He's a lovely man, and his wife Gretchen as well. Lovely people, and very outgoing and very, very sport orientated as well. The big Waterford United fan, hurling fan, and sort of spoke a lot about sport. And there was a luncheon actually for the Irish community, and they're trying to do a lot of work here in terms of raising awareness for maybe like an Irish cultural centre. And that was one of the reasons why they were working hard to get him down to Charlotte. And then thankfully he came across to the club as well and spent a couple of hours with us. So it was great to have them and to host them, and hopefully it's the start of a good relationship with them and the people in Charlotte here in terms of trying to achieve their goals. It
is your first senior management job in football. And what do you do on day one when you go into a new club in a new country? What do you do day one on the job? What are your first intentions?
It's a good question, really, because once there's interest from the club, and you think that something could happen with the club, obviously it really kicks into overdrive. Then that is day one in many respects. And the first thing is to start, getting an idea about the team and where they're at and the players that are available, and how they would fit in terms of your own philosophy towards the game, and sort of looking to build the roster from there. And so I've seen a lot of the team before I ever even arrived in Charlotte, and I've been working closely with the general manager, Mike Jeffries, to try and get players in now. This is a really busy time in the season, because you've got sort of players potentially from Europe and around the world, but a lot of the players will come via MLS, and players maybe that are in MLS that are maybe not getting game time, that want to drop down on loan, and so there's a lot of moving parts at the moment. You've got the draft that just happened last Friday, and then players from that they'll be drafted by MLS teams. Not all of them will then retain their contract by the time pre-season finishes. So there's different parts to it. It's not, I suppose, as clean cut as the windows at home in terms of that 31 days to make things happen. And the players are coming from a lot of different sources as well. So it's just trying to get a grip on that, really, in many respects, and sort of work closely with the general manager, look at your targets in your management team, and try and work out to the best of your ability, who could be a good fit, and then obviously budgetary constraints and all that type of thing, and try and formulate a group of people that not just can do it for me, but want to do it and have the mindset and the mentality to be part of something for a few years. So that's really what's been happening over the last couple of weeks, and we're sort of we're in the middle of that right now. Once I finish the phone call here, I'll be going over to the office and Mike's there waiting, and we're going to pick up the conversation we had yesterday as well in terms of targets and players and stuff.
Yeah, so the Charlotte Independents, for anyone who doesn't know, they play in the Eastern Conference of the United Soccer League, finished 11th last season. It's a full-time professional league, Jim.
It's a full-time professional league, yeah. They've rebranded now the US Championship. I think that makes it clear for most people, around the world in terms of the Championship and the Premier League structure. And so, it's the second tier. It's professional league, and you've got both conferences. The top 8 teams will qualify for the playoffs. And then you've got quarterfinals, semi-finals, conference final, and then the 2 conference winners would play off then the USL Cup final. So I actually like the thought of that, because it reminds me a wee bit of home, to be honest with you. You've got the league format, although the league and the championship's not linked in Gaelic football. You've got the league and the championship format, and then if you do sort of achieve your goals and you get to the playoffs, it becomes knockout football. And that's something that I'm very used to in terms of Gaelic football, and so I would sort of relish that if you're in a position to be in that top 8.
Looking at the website and looking at the current roster, there were 7 players there, and you're talking about that process of signing players over the next couple of weeks in time for pre-season. And you've worked as a coach for 6-7 years now, and you've built your way up and you're getting your qualifications, and I'd imagine you're looking forward to getting on the training pitch. This side of it though, the business side of it, how steep a learning curve has it been over the last couple of weeks?
I suppose it's like anything, when you get into a new job and there's a lot of moving parts, but I think, to be honest with you, I mean, in Celtic, the office was open plan. You had all the coaches and the first team coaches and the reserve coaches in the one room, if you like, in an open plan thing, and a lot of the conversations would be happening in that office, and whether it was Neil Lennon or Ronnie or Brendan, you are exposed to a lot of sort of the workings of how things happen, and so players coming in, players coming out, deals and how they can be done and how they can be structured and everything. These are just conversations that are going on all the time, and people walking in the door and agents and players, and so from that point of view, it's not something that's sort of that I'm alien to. I think Celtic is a very, very big club, and the way they do their business there is at a very high level, and so I think in terms of schooling, I think I've got a very good education in terms of my time at Celtic.
Because it is, there's no doubt, a pretty unique conversion from coaching a Gaelic football team to coaching a soccer team, and people ask questions about that. I know, Kev, even you were talking about it before, of going into a totally different sport and the skill set that's needed from one to the other. Do you feel fully at home now at a soccer club?
Probably not, because I haven't started yet in terms of, being out on the pitch. But I would also say that I probably had the same feelings, the couple of weeks before I started with Donegal. It's the exact same dynamics in many respects. You've got your own style, your own vision, what you want to do, what you want to achieve. You've got to bring a group of players together, and that's the most important thing in any sport, the group of people that you want to try and bring together to move the football club forward or to move the county forward. And then it's up to you then and your coaching staff to sell that vision, and then obviously to start work on that on a daily basis. So the dynamics for me are exactly the same. It's just about working through those processes and having people there, as I said earlier, that want to be there, that want to work hard, and sort of, we're here for a 3-year contract, and you're going to bring guys in, to work with you. And for me, one of the most important things, obviously the culture is number one, and so if you bring people into that culture, it's their job, and they're doing it every day of the week, and so for me it's really important that when they're there, that they're happy, that they're content, that they have fun, and Donegal, we had a lot of blackguards in Donegal, and we had a lot of practical joking and everything else went on. Sometimes that wasn't what was portrayed in the media, but that's the group that we had, and I think that's very important. I think it's really important to, if it's going to be your job and you're going to be there every day, that you really enjoy being there and working hard. And then I suppose on the dynamic side of things, for me, it's important not to have too big of a squad, and just have people there that know that they're very important to to the overall group, that everybody's going to be used, everybody's going to play a part, and that you're not sort of on match day when you take your 18 away, that you're not leaving 10 people behind you, 5 or 6 of which are very disgruntled. I think it's important to have players that can play in a few positions, and so that you won't normally sort of go outside of that 18, but if you do, you've got people there that can step in, maybe younger guys that are on a development curve, that that if they get any taste of it at all, they're really happy, and they feel that they're moving forward, and they're in a culture and an environment that's moving them forward anyway. So these are the things that are I suppose, are management decisions. Everybody will have a different take on that, but for me, those things would be very, very important.
And you've had time to think about this role, and as you say, you've watched the videos, you're aware of what the club is about. But on the pitch, the style of football that you're going to play, like I guess when you referenced Donegal, you'd been involved with the under-21s, you would have been aware of the talents of the various players around and how they could fit into your style. You're still, right now, even a few weeks away from the start of the season, not fully sure of your final squad. Do you have a set style of play in mind that you want these players to go out on the pitch with, or do you wait till your squad is finalised and then work around the players that are there?
No, I think I do have a vision. In terms of systems and stuff, I wouldn't be absolutely wedded to anything. I think that even when I was at Donegal, that was very important. You always have to have something up your sleeve. You always want to be able to bring something different on any given day and sort of be able to mix it up and stuff. So I think that's important, but at the same time, the principles have to be there every single day. And, we were, in the early days in Donegal, 2011, we were very defensive, and, a lot of that was down to what went on in the past, that we were hemorrhaging a lot of goals in big games. The boys had been through a lot psychologically, and so, and it was important for us to get traction early on, and then to build from that and become better and better and better offensively. I think it's a wee bit easier in terms of the defensive side of things and football and soccer, because you've got to play out through the pressure. In Gaelic, you can put the ball under your arm, and if you're strong enough and physical enough, you can break that tackle. And football, if you're being pressed aggressively, you've got to find an option, and if you press well enough and correctly, you should be able to force that ball along. And so the pressure and the intensity, the principles of that will be the same, but maybe where you can execute that in the field would be slightly different, and obviously depending on the quality of the opposition and how good they are playing out, you can set your line very high or a medium or a low block, but I'd like to think if we get the right athletes in, with good technical ability, that we'll be able to take the game to a lot of these teams and put them under a lot of pressure, maybe further up the pitch.
That really does seem to be a common theme around a lot of the top teams at the moment. Athletes, players who can keep going for the full 90 minutes and can play at a very, very high tempo, both when they have the ball and when they don't have the ball, that they can do that high press, but then when they actually get possession of the ball, they can maintain it, they can get the ball away quickly. The players at that level, from what you've seen so far, do they have that ability? Do they have that level?
Yeah, well, we don't have a lot of players at the moment, and that's why we're working very hard to get the ones in, that we feel will have the capacity, and the ones that we have will have that. And we've got Enzo Martinez dropping down from MLS last year, and he will be a very important player for us. He was USL Player of the Year a couple of years ago, the top 3 the year before that. So you've got these guys, that have been there and done that, and they've also sort of, their natural instinct is that, front foot. I think those type of people are very, very important to the group, and sort of adding to that as much as possible as well. And in terms of the guys that you bring in, is going to be very important too.
Yeah, Jim, Nathan spoke about me before. I'd spoke about you maybe a couple of years ago now when you'd first gone into coaching soccer. But I think my reservations would have been about it initially, would have been about the acceptance, I think, initially. And so many coaches that I think of them off the top of my head, someone like Chris Shuton, who'd worked within a structure for 10, 15 years before he decided to take the top job. So was it always in your mindset to think, well, look, I'm going to build a coaching team around me, I'm going to have that top job? Or did you want to actually immerse yourself in the game first and foremost before you actually took a top job on?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Kevin. No, I think really, I was very conscientious when I went to Celtic, that I was that novice, and sort of that I didn't have that experience. I had no experience of the culture. Kevin, you were reared in that culture, and things that you would take for granted. I was learning when I went to Celtic, if that makes sense, and I suppose it would be reversed in terms of Gaelic football, just things you'd be at a game and you'd be shaking your head at, and because it's just second nature to you, so there was a huge learning curve in terms of that, and I'm sure there'll be a huge learning curve for myself this year as well in terms of the first season. But I had that with Donegal as well. It was 2011 was a massive learning curve in terms of management and what was involved in management. But you're right in terms of the cultural stuff. It is a different game. The dynamics of the game and how guys operate and how guys think, and obviously it's their livelihood, and that can have serious implications when things are not going well for players, as you well know. And so all these things were new to me going into the culture, and so it was important for me just to get a grip of that as quickly as possible. And for me, the best way to do that was observation through the psychological role that I had, and then obviously the coaching badges, which the FAI were fantastic with. And I started at the very, very bottom rung of the ladder, and we kickstarted a one-day course, and then the two, and then the youth start, the UEFA B, the UEFA A, and I'm actually back in Ireland on Monday for 5 days for my pro licence that starts. It's been sort of my own personal experiences in terms of the game since 2012, and then obviously the coach education side of it as well, and both of them sort of went hand in hand. And also the guys that I've been, lucky to work with, Neil Lennon and Ronnie and Brendan Rodgers and Roger Smith, and Nathan spoke earlier there, about common themes in terms of pressing and the way the game has gone now, and how modern, this modern approach and stuff. But Roger Smith sort of, blew my mind away to an extent when I went to Beijing in terms of just the heat out there in the summer was absolutely phenomenal, and still the level of intensity that the players were able to bring to the game was something that I hadn't seen before, So it's all learning, and for me that's what I hope to continue to do, is to continue me learning and hopefully in the process win as many games as possible.
What about the mentality on a GAA player to the football lads, the soccer boys? I'm friendly enough with a good few of the GAA lads, and they continuously call off soft soccer lads. And to an extent, they're probably right. To an extent, I wouldn't disagree with a certain amount of it. But how have you find the difference in mentality and maybe even the toughness and maybe the preparation and the willingness to work as well? Have you found any difference between the two?
No, listen, I think it's got to do with sort of the type of player that you're after. I mean, if you look at Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool at the moment, like, he doesn't really play with a number 10. He plays with hard-working strikers, wingers that can press the game, that can take the game to the opposition and stuff, And so another guy would want a striker and a very sort of creative number 10 behind that. It's a different manager, it's a different players, so that manager probably won't expect the level against the ball that the number 10 is going to give him. So a lot of it's down to philosophy, and if you're a guy that just wants really good players on the pitch, then maybe you're going to have to sacrifice in terms of work rate in some areas. And if you're a guy that, like Jurgen Klopp and a lot like Pochettino and a lot of these guys that sort of demand this level regardless, and Roger Smith in Beijing, then you've got to recruit for that. And so it just really depends how you see the game yourself, and then obviously going out to try and to recruit people that can do that job for you. And if you're recruiting people, as I said earlier, people that can do it, and I think most players can do it, versus people that want to do it. And I think for me, when I was managing Donegal and when I was trying to recruit players in Donegal, I remember going to a match and David Walsh, who was playing with a Division 3 team in Donegal at the time. I remember seeing him in a game before I took over, and they were getting absolutely annihilated in a championship match. He was still running himself into the ground, and I remember just standing at the game just thinking, that's the type of person I want. And he had a huge impact on our squad, starting and coming off the bench, and when he came off the bench every day, you knew what you were getting, if that makes sense. And so, being honest with you, a lot of this is just down to people, and I think whether it's basketball or football or soccer or Gaelic, whatever it is, people are people, and they want to feel that they're part of something, that that they add value, self-value, self-worth, and if you can get those things high and people to buy into the culture, then I think a lot of the things on the pitch take care of themselves. If the culture is poor and people know that that the demands are not there from the coach, then that's the way they're going to operate. And I think, to be fair, in Donegal, that's the way it was for a long, long time. So yeah, I'd like to think that we will bring people in with the right mentality, and I'd like to think we would try and create a culture that's very hard working, but where everybody feels valued and respected.
Charlotte is a good sporting city. It has the Carolina Panthers. There's an NBA team there as well. And I have seen that they've got big crowds to some of the games in that International Champions Cup when Liverpool have been over, when Borussia Dortmund have been there. They've got 50,000 people. So there is obviously an interest in football. But from your short time there, have you got a sense of what this team and what this club can become?
Well, that's the whole thing, Nathan, really. You know, I mean, there's a short-term play and there's a longer-term play, and I think for the club, they move into a stadium, and 2 seasons from now, a new stadium that the city's building for them, a $35 million stadium, Memorial Park, that will become Soccer-Specific Stadium, or Soccer First Stadium, I think they're calling it. And so the club's very focused on that and trying to move towards that and build towards that. And if we can get success in the pitch to match sort of the ambition in terms of, the development off the pitch, these are all things that are sort of pointers and markers in the sand for the likes of the MLS that sort of require a specific type of stadia, access to a downtown location. Years ago, I think the whole thing was about, the soccer in America was about suburbia and it was about families, and I think that has changed significantly over the last number of years. And now that the MLS realise that it's more about millennials and it's more about people that live in cities, it's more about the 18 to 40 bracket, and people that want to jump on a tram or a train and or walk to the stadium and have a beer or a bite to eat on the way home. And it's more about sort of the overall experience of it. And so you see a lot of the stadiums that were outside the cities for a good reason initially, moving to downtown locations. Like in here in Charlotte, the baseball team, I think it's the Knights, the minor league baseball team, they're in a very similar situation to ourselves. They were 22 minutes out of the city. They moved to a downtown location a number of years ago there, and it increased their attendances by a multiple of 9. So that's what the intention is within the club, to get to that downtown location, tap into that sort of millennials and the families, of course, but I think the accessibility for people is very, very important. And then when you start hitting them higher numbers, you can maybe knock on people's door and say, this city has the capacity and the infrastructure to go to MLS.
Just before we let you go, like football for a long time was probably seen as a little bit of a closed shop, but you look at somebody now like Jose Mourinho with very little playing background who was able to get all the way to the very top of the game. You've always come across as a very, very ambitious character. I'd imagine you feel that the sky's the limit with this over the next 10, 20 years?
I think absolutely the opposite. I think there's a ceiling in everything, and you've got to break through that ceiling. And for me, my first job, is to get the people in first of all. The next job then is to sort of, work on the training pitch and get the team working to the way you want. And then the next thing is to be really, really competitive in games. And I think, it doesn't matter what your job is, whether you're a broadcaster or a manager or a teacher or anything else. You get sort of comfortable in your environment, and when you get comfortable in your environment, you try and push yourself and stretch yourself again and move into a new space, and then hope that you get comfortable in that space and you move again. And we spoke a lot about that, in terms of Donegal, and I knew that we couldn't win the All-Ireland if we didn't win an Ulster Championship. How can you say we're the best in the country if you're not the best in your own province? And so we had to prove to ourselves that we were going to be able to go into that space, be competitive in that space, and then win ultimately in that space. And once you do that, the emotional connection with what you're doing and the people around you and everything creates that new space anyway, just subliminally. And then you're automatically, the following season, you're the reigning champions, and you've created a new space for yourself anyway. And then it's about trying to retain that and going for bigger goals. And so I think that's the same for any job, for any person in the world. It's about sort of being comfortable in your environment and then stretching yourself and opening up and going again. And I think that's a big part of the manager's job as well. And probably connected a bit with what Kevin was speaking about earlier about the mentality of the soccer players and stuff. I think one of the biggest things is to be able to look fellas in the eyes and say, what the bloody hell do you want to do here? Like, you're going to be here for a couple of years. What's this about? Do you want to come in and train and see how this goes, or do you want to sort of set a very high bar here, be part of something special that you're going to remember in 20 years' time, and pick up a phone and talk to a guy and be able to have that connection for the rest of your life? Because you sort of were through the arduous part of the training, and that brought out the best in you. And then as a result, when things were going wrong in tight games, that you were actually able to hold on to something very, very precious to you, because you've worked hard to put yourself in that position. And so I think that, nobody likes hard work, but I think whenever you are worked hard and you know that you are working hard and you're looking at your teammates and they're in the same space, you're living and you're part of something bigger than yourself. And for me, that's the type of questions I feel I need to be asking the players. Why are you here? What do you want to achieve? How are we going to go about this? And sort of setting the boundaries around that to make sure that we're being true to ourselves and there's an honesty in the group, and that we get the best out of ourselves. And if you get the best out of yourself and we don't make the playoffs, I won't be sad. I'll be disappointed it doesn't happen, but the reality is that will be our level, and then we'll have to try and find a way to move up from there the following year. And so, once you've given everything, there's nothing left to give. And I think for me, as a manager, that's really important, and really important to try and get the guys thinking that way.
What's the ultimate goal then for yourself then, Jim? Would it be to come back to Europe? Would it be to come back to England, Scotland, or even League of Ireland, the top job within the FAI? What would your ultimate goal be then?
I think the ultimate goal would just be comfortable in this space. And if I'm comfortable in this space and I feel that I can move up, whether it's move up, into MLS or here in America, and become comfortable there and then move back to Europe, that would be sort of clear in everybody's mind, that you'd want to sort of move and get comfortable and move as many times as possible, But I'm very aware of the fact that, a lot of people have gone before me that have played much more football than me and at international level, and that hasn't happened. And so it's a very, very tough environment. And there's no doubt about that. Some phenomenal players haven't managed to break into management. And as you said earlier, plenty of other guys who didn't have the background have been able to. So it's just about, I don't know, to be honest, and I can't answer that question. All I can say is the space that I'm in at the moment, I'm really working hard to try and make the best of that. And if I can make the best of that, then my intention would be to move to the next level and continue on that journey until you do hit the ceiling, And it mightn't happen here, and people will go, well, listen, he was a GA manager. It was never going to happen, was it? And that would be an easy one. But for me, I'm not worried about that. I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking about the next number of months and getting the most out of those players and getting the guys in the door that hopefully will make a difference.
When's the first game?
First game is Paddy's weekend, believe it or not. And I got a phone call over the Christmas from an Ardra man to say that there was going to be, if not a couple of coach shows, maybe a charter flight from New York coming down for the first game. And once he heard it was Paddy's weekend, he was doubly happy. And the game is on the Friday night, so I think the club are actually going to call it St. Practice. So it'll get people into the right the right mindset for the weekend ahead. And so we're hoping that there'll be a very big turnout. And I have to say that the Irish community have been absolutely fantastic with myself and the family since we've arrived, and they just can't do enough, to be honest with you. And on every level, whether it's schools or business or everything you could imagine, they're there and they're trying to help us as best they can. So it's very, very much appreciated.
Just don't let them put a leprechaun suit on you for Paddy's weekend.
No, I don't think that'll happen.
Jim, best of luck with it. We'll check in once the season gets underway.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, guys.